There is a big notion out there in some pockets of Christianity that religion and science are incompatible. Some people think that science and religion don't go together, which this is a major myth. Science is only possible because of religion. Science is only possible because of religion. And let me explain that. Science was started by men who believed in God. Isaac Newton, Galileo, Francis Bacon, the founder of the scientific method. These were all men who believed in a creator, an intelligent designer. And because they believed that this world was intelligently designed, they could study it and know it, right? If you believed that the world was here through a random, unguided, chaotic explosion, it would not be rational, knowable, repeatable. There would be no way to learn anything from it. If one day the sun rose in the west and the next day you dropped something and it fell up, and if we actually lived in a world that was randomly mutating and full of chaos, that's the kind of world we would expect, not one that is so neatly and rationally ordered. Everything in it is finely tuned and consistent. It must have come from an intelligent, finely tuned, reasonable, rational, and knowable creator that we could maybe get to understand a little bit by studying the thing he created. That is how science was started. So there's no incompatibility. Okay, but let's put a finer point on this. There are areas of Christianity that believe they're incompatible with evolution. So I want to talk about evolution and the age of the earth and Christianity, because this is a topic that causes a lot of people some big problems, and it really shouldn't. First of all, let's talk about age of the earth. The first thing you should know is that the Bible does not say how old the earth is or how old the universe is. It just doesn't say. The Bible is not a science textbook. The Bible is telling us that in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. It's telling us that God made things ordered. He created them with a purpose and a design, and that we are made in his image. These are the big themes that you should be taking away from the creation account in Genesis. It doesn't tell us how old it is. As much as young earth creationists wish it did, it just doesn't. There are a lot of different ways to interpret the word yom, Y-O-M, the Hebrew word for day in Genesis. Even within Genesis, the first two chapters, the word yom is used in three different ways, right? It's used to describe the day. There was day and there was night, the first day. So right there, it's used to describe just the light part of the day. And then it's used to the whole day. Then we're told that in the day you eat of the fruit, you will surely die. They didn't die that day, 24-hour period. So we get the word yom, day. First day, second day, third day of creation. We don't really know if this was a literal 24-hour period or if it was a figure of speech. Like today we would say, back in the day of horses and buggies. Nobody means in the 24-hour period of horse and buggies, or back in the day of knights and castles, right? That word day means a time period, an age, an epoch. Okay. But even if it did mean a 24-hour period, we don't know that they were all consecutive. So there could have been a literal 24-hour period and then a vast number of years and then another 24-hour period. Or the whole thing could have been vast ages. We don't know. Or it could have been 6 literal days. In that case, everything was created with the appearance of age. Now, if you are interested in this topic, I'm going to highly recommend to you the book called 7 Days That Divide the World by John Lennox. Fantastic little book. It's short, it's to the point, and it lays out all the different ways the creation account could be interpreted. It's a very fascinating book. If you want to go way deep in academic, I recommend The Creator and the Cosmos by Hugh Ross. That's a whopper of a book. I had to read every paragraph 3 times to understand what he was saying, but it's well worth it. You get to understand things like the speed of light traveling from stars, and based on their distance and the fact that we can see their light, it means that light's been traveling for millions of years to get to us. So if you can see it, there's a certain age that can be figured out there. Either the universe is billions of years old to be able to see that light, or when God created it, he put the light already here, or the speed of light's changed over time, right? Like, so there's some options that you have. But here's what I want you to understand. If I just threw out a whole bunch of stuff and confused you with what? Good. I want you to understand that it's complicated, and there's a whole bunch of different theories and interpretations of the age of the earth and how God created it. Did he create it old, or did he create it to appear old? Those are some big questions, right? Like young earth creationists use the argument, he didn't create a baby Adam and a baby Eve. He created full grown adults with the appearance of age. Just like he wouldn't have created little baby trees, he created full grown trees, full grown people, full grown animals. That would also mean full grown mountains and rivers and rocks and stars and planets. So there's great arguments either way. But here's what we need to know. If Darwinian evolution is true, if the universe began about 14 billion years ago with a big bang, that does not disprove Christianity in the least. Okay? And we need to understand this as Christians, as ambassadors. We need to be able to understand that we do not need to fall on our swords over evolution. Evolution is the mechanism that some people believe delivered life. By the way, Darwinian evolution, especially neo-Darwinian evolution, which takes more into account genetic traits, it's been widely rejected by recent science. Okay. And here's something you need to understand. When new discoveries are made, it takes a couple decades for those to make their way into textbooks. Textbooks are always like the last thing to get changed and updated. And that's exactly what's happening here. There's stuff in public school science textbooks that no science in the Royal Science Academy that meets every year even agrees to anymore. They've already figured out that that's not accurate, but it's still in the history books. But you can look more into that on your own. If you take a look at the website called Descent from Darwin, I'm going to type this in here so I tell you the right thing, because you got to check this out. This is so cool. Descent from Darwin. Okay, it's .org. That's what I wasn't sure of. Descentfromdarwin.org. You will see a list of thousands of tenured science professors from top universities saying that they are skeptical of the ability of random mutation and natural selection to account for the complexity of life. So this is far from a settled matter. This is far from anything that all scientists agree on. It is widely debated. We're still learning a ton. But here's a couple things we know. We know that there is no evidence, hear this, no evidence of any species becoming a different species. There's no evidence for one species becoming another species, right? Which you would think if this had been happening for millions of years, the fossil record should support that. And we should have tons of fossils of these transitional forms of life. We don't have any of those. All we have when it comes to evolution, when it comes to adaptation, when it comes to mutations, and when it comes to natural selection, all of these, we have evidence for small change within a species. That's called microevolution. We have good evidence for this. Nobody debates microevolution. No one. We all know that during a time of drought, when the seeds and nuts get harder due to lack of rain, the beaks of the birds become thicker and harder. Okay? That's the bird's beak, the finches, adapting to the drought to be able to crack open the nuts from the tree that are now harder. That is a great example of microevolution. We know that animals, their fur coats get thicker when the climates get colder, that spots can change to blend them in with different environments. Nobody debates this stuff. That's microevolution. There is no evidence for macroevolution. We have no evidence of one species becoming another species. Darwin's finches are still finches. They're not becoming anything else. They're still finches. So we don't have anything becoming a totally different species. That's called speciation, and that's macroevolution. So sometimes when Christians say there's no evidence for macroevolution, non-Christians will give them examples of microevolution as their evidence, right? Like it'll go like this. A Christian will say there's no evidence of evolution, and the atheist will say, sure there is. The Darwin's finches, right? Okay, we're saying there's no evidence of macroevolution, and you're offering us an example of microevolution. So that doesn't really provide any evidence for anything. That's all important for us to know as Christians. It's also important for everyone, Christian or not, to recognize this fact. A big bang requires a big banger. Something had to start it. Something had to start it. Aristotle knew this. Aristotle knew there had to be an unmoved mover or an uncaused first cause. He figured this out. He postulated it, and it's been proven to be true. I want you to think about this. If there was ever a time when nothing existed, if there was ever a time when nothing existed, then nothing would exist now. If there was ever a time when nothing existed, nothing would exist now. Because something never comes from nothing. Nothing means no thing. Nothing. That means something has to be eternal. Something has to be eternal. And we already know it's not the universe. Science has already discovered back in 1927 and 1929, between Einstein's theory of relativity and Edwin Hubble's telescope, we've already discovered, based on the expansion of the universe, that the universe was a small speck that came into existence about 14 billion years ago. So we know that the universe ain't eternal. That means something had to be here before it. If it's not the universe that's eternal, then what is it? Christians say it's God. God started the bang. God created everything. He spoke, and the heavens and earth came into existence. Atheists scoff at that and say that's ridiculous. That's preposterous. There's no such thing as God. That's a fairy tale. To which we say, okay, then what started it? And they go, I don't know, maybe aliens. Okay, so that's even more preposterous, right? So all you did there was kick the can down the road a little further. Who created the aliens? Everyone has a big problem with what got here first. It's either God or it's something else. So here is where we get to the real point. If you don't believe in God, you believe in a miracle bigger than anything in the Bible. If you don't believe in God, you believe in a bigger miracle than anything in the Bible. You believe that everything came from nothing. Everything coming from nothing is a bigger miracle than a virgin birth and a resurrection, by the way. Those are much easier to believe. It's much easier to believe that there is a God outside of space, time, and matter that brought everything into existence created you in his image, came to earth in the person of Jesus, died on the cross to pay for your sins, and rose again. That is a much more believable narrative than everything came from nothing and maybe aliens. All right. That one requires a lot more faith to believe it than Christianity. So, as Christians, as people of faith, we should be able to understand there is zero incompatibility between religion and science. In fact, it was the first scientists were all followers of God. That's why they thought they could study his universe, right? And we know something had to bring everything into existence. You think about this for a second. Whatever created space, time, and matter has to be outside of space, time, and matter, right? So there's something spaceless, timeless, and immaterial and extremely powerful to bring all this into existence. And whatever it is had to be personal in order to create people, and it had to be loving in order to create love. And now we're talking about a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, personal, loving thing. Okay, this is starting to sound a lot like the God of the Bible. But anyway, as Christians, we should not be afraid to talk about the compatibility between God and science. You can't have one without the other.